Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. We are tenure-track faculty members in the sciences, working at a primarily undergraduate university in California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss. Welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. I'm Claire.
And I'm Ruth, and today we're talking about pre-semester communication. But before we do that, Claire, how was your week?
My week was great. I was in Colorado for a family gathering, and we were in the Great Plains, farming and ranch area in northeastern Colorado. And one thing that was really striking, well, first of all, a totally different landscape than where we are, where we have these big trees and hills and stuff. And so that was really cool in itself. But one thing that was really cool was the storm came through, and you could see it from miles away. Like, you could be like, it's raining over there, and there's these huge clouds. And, we had a lot of time being like, there's a storm coming, and it's coming our way. And we meandered around and chatted for a while and put some stuff in the refrigerator. And then finally the storm came, and it was like crashing rain sideways and like little balls of hail, and it was crazy to see it, but then you could see the end of the storm coming too.
Wow.
And it was just really cool to experience that totally different landscape through that storm.
That's super interesting because where we live is really micro. Yeah. Because we have you don't see anything coming. And I can remember in grad school when I lived somewhere else in America and seeing a lightning storm so far away, approaching, and that was super interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I have a question that kind of signifies my total ignorance of U.S. Geography. But is the plains, are they up high? I went to Denver, Colorado, and it was at elevation.
Sure, yeah, it's less high than Denver, but I think it's still 3,000 or 4,000 feet or something. Maybe 3. I don't know. It's not at sea level, but it's flat. It's slowly sloping. But slowly sloping.
For some reason, this is just putting me in mind of all of those kind of books, set back in the day.
Oh, yeah. No, it really felt that way. You could totally picture the wagons going across the fields and stuff.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
And there's something, I say this with the total ignorance of someone who lives somewhere incredibly mild and the weather doesn't change that much, but there is something about the drama of a big storm and I don't know, everything feels very fresh afterwards.
Totally. Yeah. So that was a fun experience.
Cool.
So how about you? How was your week?
My week was really good. It's kind of funny. I just realized I have sort of social stamina issues now. Where I was chatting with someone and they were talking about going to spend the day with some friends. And I was like, oh my God, a whole day with people, talking the whole time. And whoa, that's a lot. Yeah. And it's definitely gradually getting more and more used to talking to people. But I remember when we had not really communicated with people in person for some time and then having a 30-minute face-to-face 3-dimensional conversation and being tired afterwards. Yeah, it's just sort of mind-blowing to me to imagine spending a whole day. And we used to do that all the time. But It's just whoa, that's a lot of chatting.
That's so, yeah, I know what you mean. Recently I was feeling I forgot how to do small talk. You cover hello, how are you, weather, what do you talk about? And so that and then to imagine, I know what you mean.
And even I read two, one thing was an article where someone was having someone visit and they kind of forgot how to be a host. They just...
Oh, yes.
And another one was someone was going on a trip and they used to travel all the time, but they kind of lost their travel skills. Just knowing, these are the snacks I bring. And this is so how was it for you guys to go on that trip to Colorado? Did it take you a while to get back in your travel groove?
Good question. One variable was that was the first time I'd flown when we'd had this mask mandate. And so that was different enough that it was a new thing of traveling that I had to think about. So I don't know, that kind of stopped me from thinking as much about what I had forgotten about traveling. But I did, on the way back, I do remember feeling I didn't bring any snacks. I normally bring snacks.
Totally. All that stuff that just became automatic, I guess we need to rewire and learn that stuff again for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I have a quote
Great.
that kind of relates a little bit to today, but it's from Jane Eyre by Charlotte
Oh,
Bronte.
that's fun.
And it's, I would always rather be happy than dignified.
Ooh.
And I don't know, for some reason it really resonated with me about my ongoing theme on this podcast of, I don't know, wanting to have some gravitas with the students and not quite achieving that or whatever. Just all of my issues about basically wanting to be Snape but not being Snape. And so, yeah.
You
so
want
anyway,
to be Snape, but you also want to be relatable and friendly, and
Right.
yeah, totally.
I wish I had like a translator thing I could put on everyone. And if you're kind of mean and cocky, you will hear me as Snape. If you're not, you will hear me as like, hey, friends. And so just whatever.
It'd be like
Yeah.
the universal translator in Star Trek that translates to different languages,
yeah, I
but it
love
would
that.
be like translating your tone. I think
Yeah.
that's a fun idea.
I can program in the attitude. Or maybe I should just get over myself and be happy rather than dignified or whatever. So that's what I think that should happen too.
And I
So,
think maybe, I imagine it relates to this. I'm not sure the context of that quote, but what I'm imagining is it's about being your true self. Like, what do you, Ruth,
Exactly.
want to be in front of the classroom? Not what do you feel like you should be. Or something
And
like that.
there's been moments where I've managed to occupy that space and it always works better. You know, because when someone's like, oh no, you're like, I don't really care. And, you know,
Right.
but it's always when you're kind of pretending to be something else, you feel extra vulnerable too. Yeah.
And the thing is, and we've talked about this before, of course, but I feel like it's worth saying again, how no matter what you do, there's going to be somebody it doesn't work for, or somebody who complains or something. And so you might as well just do the thing you want to do.
Right. Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Okay, sorry. Now we're doing a whole other podcast episode. But it is funny how, like, in the beginning, you really believe if you just tweak this thing over here, like, everyone will be happy. And then I think there is something liberating in,
Yeah.
that's not possible.
Yeah. Seeing those evaluations where half of them are like, you should do more of this, and half of them are like, you should do less of that. You're like, oh, I guess I can't get
there's
the
no
magic amount of that. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Okay, so tell me.
Okay.
So today we're talking about pre-semester communication, and we kind of mean email, right? Because
Yeah,
that's
I
how-
mean, that's mostly how we communicate when it's not the semester, I guess. Yeah, and so I'm thinking about emails that we might send the students, or emails they might send us, what content might go back and forth before the semester begins that would be helpful for the semester. So,
Yes.
so that's what I'm thinking about. So what is working for you with pre-semester emails?
I think so the kind of pre-semester emails that come from me, I only did for the first time last year when we were going to be online. And I think I would always do it now going forward.
Cool.
And so I really felt like I needed to set expectations beforehand about workload in particular, because I think for the virtual stuff, I don't know if I told you this, but like when I took a virtual class, I was like, sweet, it's probably going to be like 20 minutes. Like when they say 5 hours, they mean like 45 minutes a week or whatever. And that was not true. So I tried to really explain, like, when you're planning your work schedule, expect you will be doing this amount of work.
Oh, that's great. I like
And then, and then we had to, like, again, it was all so ambiguous about when we were going to meet and is it synchronous or asynchronous. So that's the first time I did that big kind of essay email. And so the only other, the other email I do send students, or like always have done, is to remind them to do this like assignment that's due for the first class.
Oh,
but I
what's
think
that?
Like, you know, the one I think I talked about, like where you meet your classmates and you do that in the discussion forum. So I think I've emailed them that. But I really like this whole thing of sort of like, I don't really want to say it's a syllabus, but some kind of setting expectations and emailing and all of that sort of stuff. So I really like that. And I also liked, and I say it on the first day, part of the reason I sent you that email is that you recognize you will be communicating with me by email. And so you need to check your email.
These are such good things I need to add to my emails. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Workload and communicate via email. I'm writing these down.
Yeah. Well, I think, and again, I didn't do this before because it felt like, oh, the workload's clear because it's...
We're meeting. Yeah, totally.
Right. But I think I think I would definitely carry that through now onto in person. And so the other thing that I think comes up for almost everybody is students emailing saying, what can I do to be ready for this class? And so usually I tell them to just take the break and stop.
Oh, do you? That's cool.
Well, like kind of like, so say if it's the physics class, the one I've been teaching a lot, the first one, I say, yes, the prereqs are math. And so it's good to practice your algebra skills. But in terms of the physics, because they're like, which chapters should I read? And I'm like, just don't even worry about it. Just take the break.
Yeah, I like
so
that.
That's kind of,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Neat. I really like that. I love all those things that you have put in
cool.
What were you going to add?
Well, like, it's just always like, I don't know. I was always the student who was like, I'm going to spend the summer reading the book, so then I won't even have to do it when the semester starts. And then I never would, and then I would just feel really bad about it. So I just want to be like, no, yeah, and just like, don't. And, you know, and I don't know, I would love to compare this, and I have no idea how to do that, but people have some major hang-ups about physics, like major.
They do.
And especially like a lot of the chemistry students, and like, so I think a lot of them are like, there's no way I can be successful in this class unless I prepare everything in advance. Right. And so I think in that vein, I'm trying to be like, sure, you need to go through some algebra, but don't try and do this stuff now. So
that's cool. I like that. I mean, you know, so my normal response when students say, hey, what should I study is, or what should I do to prepare, is I give them a couple topics or something like that. And I have always assumed, well, they'll either look at it or they won't, and either way is fine. You know, hopefully if they were startled by the topics and remembered them being really hard, they would be more inclined to go back and look at them.
Perfect,
but
yeah.
Whatever. But that's really interesting, your point. You don't, I mean, I know that feeling where you're like all summer like, oh man, I've got to review this thing, and then you don't, and then you feel behind. But so maybe I that's interesting to say, take the break. I don't know.
I mean, to your point, though, like, I think you're talking about an upper division class.
That's true.
And so when I had the upper division class, I was like, yes, you should review the first physics class. So I was a little bit more, I think my thing with this class is just like, you don't need to be.
Yeah.
Like, you'll do fine if you come in and we just do it all together.
You don't need a ton of background to take this intro physics class. You need to remember your algebra and trigonometry, maybe.
Right.
But you don't need to have already learned a lot of physics. That's what you're trying to communicate to them.
Right. And I think there is this slight phobia because a lot of people come in and their biggest anxiety is like, I haven't had physics before. And it's like, okay, but you're not supposed to, so don't worry about it. So I think that's the kind of vein I'm trying to get at there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So some reassurances. I love that.
So what's working for you?
So I have been sending an email in June or July, usually June, with the textbook. And this is, you know, my first semester starting here, the professor who had taught this class before told me to do that. And so I just started doing that right away. And the idea is that then they can get the textbook earlier. Like earlier in the summer, it's cheaper. It goes up and up in price throughout the summer. And so that's what I usually say. Hey, welcome to the class. I wanted to give you, you know, info about what the textbook is so you can get it cheaper. I see that there's used copies on Amazon for less than $50 or whatever, but it'll definitely go up and it's much more expensive at the bookstore. So I like that email. And sometimes it opens the door for a couple students to reply. Usually they just say thanks or something like that, but I feel like that's nice to establish that we're going to be having back and forths. And if they have a question, they could ask and that kind of thing.
Well, full disclosure, the reason why I sent that email last summer outlining all this stuff is because you talked about doing this. And I was like, that's such a good idea. And I was like, wow, does that mean Claire has never had the 5,000 emails about what book are we going to use? I love the way I just answer every email instead of being like, I should send people a general email. Like,
well, you know, I'm doing that too. So let's see. So the other emails I send is like, for a while I was doing online homeworks and they needed to sign up for that. I mean, they could sign up for it after the semester started, but then they'd have less time to do the homework, and that led to so many excuses right before the homework was due. So I would also send an email before the semester starts with info for signing up for that. I don't do the online homeworks anymore, so that's not a thing. But I would also, like, in the second email, like more like in August, I would include all the textbook info again for anybody who signed up late or didn't get the textbook or whatever. So that's like my normal system. But now, to your point of lots of email questions, last summer I felt like it was really important to send a lot of information because we were being virtual and nobody knew what that meant, and it was different for different classes. And so, yeah, I sent a whole, like, this is the plan. I even sent the syllabus a week early or something saying, check it out, like, see if you have any questions so you can ask them when we're going over the syllabus. And what I haven't done yet this summer, but I'm realizing I should, is send out an email about, because we are doing some kind of hybrid thing in the fall. And I sent an email, like, back when people were signing up for classes about that. But I'm sure lots of people haven't seen that, and I have gotten a couple emails asking about it, so I should take the emails asking about it as information that I should tell everybody about it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, but like one of the struggles is, though, when you have sent that email and they're like, blah, blah, and you're like, did you see the email I sent? Because like, but I guess they do get a lot of emails, and I sure don't read all my emails in detail.
I know. I mean, that is an interesting one, because usually what I want to do if they do email me with a question that I answered in that email is I want to refer them to the email, but not in a way that's like saying, oh, you should have just read this email.
How do you do that?
I don't, the balance that I've come to, and I'm not sure it's the perfect balance, but is to include the email below, to write a little short email saying, here's the answer to your specific question. Also, here's some other, the full information from my email below is down there. Let me know if you have any other questions about it.
I love that.
Of assuming that they did read it and didn't understand, like I wasn't clear about the point or something. I'm trying to give that.
That's
idea.
Really nice. And I feel like I might have gotten that email myself and been like, oh, thanks, instead of, oh, fine. So I did read the email. Like,
I know, because you can't, I mean, I don't read emails. There's plenty of emails that I've missed. Yeah. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what are you working on with emails?
So the ever elusive tone, the tone of the email. And
ever elusive indeed. Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because like, last semester in particular, I think everyone was just so, not last semester, the fall semester of 2020, everyone was just so fraught. Like everything was so loaded. Yeah. So like I would send this email and some people would be like, thanks, that's great. And like some people interpreted it totally differently. And we're like, what are you saying? Like really like, one person was like really aggressive and I was like, whoa. And like, it's so weird with the tone, and email is tricky with tone.
Always
and
text
so
is tricky.
Right. And like I had all of these email communications with this one student that were definitely not in a good tone. Okay. And then we met on Zoom for like 3 minutes and he was like, oh, I get it. It's fine. And like we just, then it was all fine and we understood each other. So whatever tone he was reading my emails in his own head was like not what I was shooting for. So I think hitting the tone, and I think I've shared on here, like a lot of that for me is using a lot of exclamation points, and like I'm not using emojis because I feel like that's crossing a line that but I may have to start using like sunshine emojis or something just to get it across. And the other thing I really struggle with, and I'm still virtual, so like in the fall, is. And I think even people face-to-face in the fall are going to do 2 weeks of virtual. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And so the first day is the first day. And this is like what's driven me bananas over the last year is like how, when we were like going to be in the classroom and everyone moves up here and moves to campus and we're ready to go, that like the kind of chaos of like moving time like stretched into the first 3 weeks.
I see.
And so I had a lot more students like at the grocery store on their phone, and you're like, this is not attending class. Like this is not going to work. And obviously we had to be really flexible last semester, but I don't know, is there a way to convey like we will be hitting the ground running?
I think so. Yeah.
And I don't want to be like terrify people, but like, and I can't say this obviously, but like you should be living where you need to be living, or you should have your internet set up or whatever it is, like, or you should be on campus so you can attend the library. And just that drove me nuts because like, it felt like it was weeks before everyone, because people were like, oh, I couldn't come to the first class because I was still moving. And
that wouldn't have happened if they had to attend in person, probably.
Right. And I think the university I worked at before, and like obviously it's nothing to the extent that it was here, but this has been a bit of a thing for me here.
Okay.
And the university I was in before, the classes were super overprescribed. So there was like 40 places in the class, and on the first day there would be 30 kids on the wait list. So you could be really, if you didn't come to the first class and do the first thing, you're out. Like we just don't have time for that. And so there was, I almost wish that was the case here. And sometimes I try and pretend it is, like, because I had students last semester who didn't reply to anything for the first week and a half.
How weird.
And I was just, and like one I just dropped because they just weren't responding. But it's just like school has started. You need to be doing stuff now. So, yeah.
Gosh, that really does sound like, obviously you did send emails last summer, but that seems to me like that is a pre-semester email. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, hey, we're starting on the first day. The first class is this day, and we're going to be covering content and beginning the class. And so plan on that.
Right.
And, you don't have to get into the details of, you shouldn't move during class, but like,
right.
Because they can decide to do that if they want to, but they should know that they are going to be missing class if they move on that same day or something, It's not, they're still taking a class. So I think that's perfectly reasonable. But I know what you mean about not wanting to be antagonist or like...
Right.
Okay. So this tone thing is really interesting because I often feel like... So I teach like... They're both upper division classes, but it's like Analytical Chemistry 1 and Analytical Chemistry 2. And so Analytical Chemistry 1, I do feel the need to be a little bit more professional and like fewer exclamation points and smiley faces. To be more like, this is a 5-unit class. You're going to have to put a lot of effort in. We're going to be moving fast. You don't want to fall behind. Like I say all these things. And then the second semester, I already know them. They know me.
Hey,
They're
guys,
expecting it to be hard. I'm like,
how was your
guys.
vacation?
Yeah, exactly. So I do feel like, and then you've got like a third scenario where you're trying to help people be comfortable with a physics class that they're scared of.
I know.
You do want them to learn a lot, and you are going to be covering a lot, but the main thing it seems like you need to get over at the beginning is this barrier that they have with all their associations with physics. So that's really interesting that you simultaneously want to say, hey, we're going to be working really hard, and we're going to be starting right on the beginning, and you need to be ready to go, but also be very, like, I don't know, sunshine emoji or something, too.
I know. I think I'm just going to give up until someone invents that Star Wars translator. And then, like, one person hears me saying, you're not as smart as you think you are. You need to work harder. And, like, the other person is like, come on, we can do it. And, But it's tricky. But, like, have you encountered those students who genuinely, like, rock up and only seem to open their email on the first day of class? Like that's the first time they've looked at their email for the whole summer, and they're like, whoa, I didn't know that and it's like, what, like, oh yeah, that drives me bananas. But
that's perfect, because then they hopefully feel a little bit behind, and they are exactly the kind of person who maybe needs a little kick to get moving. So I think that's great if they're like, oh my goodness, you sent me an email in July about getting this thing and I haven't done it yet. I think that's fine.
Yeah, and like, personally. Are we, okay, so just from like, not a legal point of view, but sort of, like, are we it's okay for us to expect students to be doing things before the first class. Is that true or false?
I don't know. I assume so. I mean, they have to get textbooks.
Right, like you can expect that they're...
They have to do things.
Yeah.
They have to buy paper and bring a pen.
Right.
So I don't see why they couldn't also introduce themselves on the Canvas page. Right.
And like, I would hope they have the textbook before we start.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that's another reason to send the email, is hopefully more of them will. Or at least if they don't have it, they know it's on them. They should have gotten
I was like, they're ashamed of themselves, but that's not quite what I want to say, but kind of. So,
but then I think that makes them more motivated to get it. They're not like, oh, well, obviously I don't have it because it's the first week. They're like, oh, I really need to get that textbook.
Yeah.
That's more true.
Yeah. And they're less like, this isn't fair. And you're like, look, everyone else has it. So, yeah. But what about you? What are you working on?
Well, I'm working on those. So, those students you mentioned that do email and ask what should they be working on if to prepare for the class. If they say, oh, man, I'm worried about this class, or I've got some extra time this summer. What should I do? And I usually reply with a couple topics for them to work on. I'm wondering whether I should include that just in my pre-semester emails, Not like this, I think, would be going too far in expecting them to do stuff in advance. I'm not saying you must review these topics before the class. I wouldn't want to say that. But I don't think it'd be unreasonable to say, so you know, these are the topics from the prereqs that we're going to be building on. And so should you want to review those, if you're feeling a little shaky on those concepts, that's something that you could review a little bit that would be helpful for you in preparing for this class.
Yeah.
So some balance of the phrasing, but I think it could be in the email. Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. And you could even just say, often students ask me this question, so I'm going to answer it. And so,
Yes. Oh, that's really good. You're so good with these emails. So
dude, with yours, maybe, but not my own. But I think, and I think it's good even just to see those words written down. And start the process of like, pH, or I can't. Sorry, that's always the thing I use as my chemistry example.
That's a good example. No, totally. It'll be, at the very least, it'll be in the back of their mind saying, what is equilibrium? Do I remember equilibrium? Or like, I remember equilibrium. Oh, do I remember this part about it? You know, it'll be in the back, simmering, if nothing else. And that's better than first day being like, oh man, what's equilibrium again? You know?
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, all of this feels like the kind of, like ebb and flow between maybe when professors used to be super like scary, like don't, like you need to know all this stuff, and then maybe being too accommodating, and then like somewhere in the middle of like, what was the word we had? Empowering people.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do it.
They're empowered to learn the material, but they must learn the material if they're going to pass the class. Like some balance. You can do it. I will help you. And if you don't, you won't pass, obviously. Like that's how the class works.
Perfect. Okay, cool. As always, lots of cool nuggets in there.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us on the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. We're delighted to have you as a listener, and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to email us, our address is contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any of your suggestions for future shows, or professor quotes that you might want to share with us, or even just things that have come up for you when you were listening to previous episodes. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would love if you would spread the word. So the best way to spread word is by telling people if you think they should listen to it, or you can leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.